Hejin stood at her workstation, her four-fingered hand delicately holding a leaf sample from one of Eunha Prime's giant purple trees. The morning light streamed through the station's curved windows, casting rainbow patterns across her pale blue skin. She loved these quiet moments in the research station, when she could focus entirely on her work. The research station itself was a thing of beauty, all smooth curves and gentle angles, built to calm the naturally anxious minds of her species. It floated 10 meters above the planet's surface on gravity repulsors, ensuring minimal impact on the environment they studied. Another fascinating mutation, she whispered to herself, adjusting the microscope's settings. The leaf's cellular structure had changed since their last survey, adapting to the recent climate shifts. Hejin's antenna twitched with excitement as she recorded her findings. Her species, the Nari, had evolved from small, tree-dwelling herbivores. Even after achieving space travel, they kept their peaceful nature and careful approach to everything. Their bodies were slim and light, perfect for their ancestral life among branches, but not very strong by galactic standards. "Hejin, your morning reports are due," called out researcher Duha from across the lab. Duha was older than Hejin, with darker blue skin that showed his age. He had been her mentor when she first arrived at the station fresh from the Science Academy. "Just finished them," Hejin replied, sending the data with a quick gesture at her workstation's holographic interface. She stretched her long, thin arms above her head, her joints making soft clicking sounds. Working bent over a microscope for hours wasn't ideal for her body. The calm of the laboratory was broken by the sudden blaring of the station's announcement system. Hejin's antenna flattened against her head at the loud noise, another holdover from her species' cautious evolution. "Attention all station personnel," Director Tawan's voice echoed through the room. "Please gather in the main conference room immediately. We have received important news from Central Command." Hejin exchanged worried looks with Duha. Their station rarely received urgent messages. They studied plants and animals, nothing that usually required immediate attention. 5 minutes later, Hejin sat in the conference room with 30 other researchers. Her feet barely touched the floor in the chair designed for multiple species. Director Tawan stood at the front, his usually pale blue skin showing hints of green, a sign of stress in their species. "I have just received word from Central Command," he began, his antenna twitching nervously. "A new spacefaring species has made contact with the stellar Commonwealth. They call themselves humans." The room filled with excited whispers. Finding new intelligent life was rare. Most known species had already been part of the Commonwealth for centuries. "They come from a planet called Earth," Tawan continued, "and our station has been chosen as one of the first scientific exchange sites. We will be hosting their representatives." Hejin felt her heart beat faster. New species meant new research opportunities, but something in the director's tone made her antenna quiver. "There is one more thing," Tawan said, his voice dropping lower. "Their home planet. It's classified as a death world." The room went silent. Hejin felt her body go cold. Death worlds were the stuff of nightmares. Planets with such harsh conditions that they produced extremely dangerous life forms. Species from such worlds were usually incredibly strong, aggressive, and resilient. And now they were coming here, to their peaceful research station. Hejin looked down at her delicate hands, then at the soft, curved walls of the room designed to avoid causing anxiety. She wondered how their gentle station would handle beings evolved to survive on a world of death. She had no idea that her life was about to change forever. The next few days at the research station were chaos. Hejin had never seen her peaceful workplace so busy. Everywhere she looked, her fellow Nari rushed around preparing for the human arrival. "These strength ratings can't be right," Hejin muttered, reading the data packet about humans for the 10th time. She sat at her desk, surrounded by holographic displays showing human physical capabilities. "They can lift how much?" The numbers scared her. According to the reports, an average human could lift nearly 4 times what a Nari could. Their bones were incredibly dense, their muscles compact and powerful. Even their skin was thick and damage-resistant compared to Nari's delicate blue covering. Jin. Director Tadawan's voice made her jump. He stood in her office doorway, looking more stressed than ever. The human ship will arrive in 3 days. Are you ready for your assignment? She nodded, though her antenna drooped slightly. As the station's lead xenobiologist, she would work directly with the humans. The thought made both her hearts race. Good, said Tadawan. Remember, they say humans are peaceful despite their physical nature. Try to stay calm when you meet them. He paused. And Jin, please don't faint this time. Jin's skin flushed purple with embarrassment. Last year, when they discovered a large predatory creature in the forest, she passed out from fear. Now everyone kept bringing it up. I won't faint, she promised, trying to sound confident. Later that day, Jin walked through the station's main hall, watching the preparations. Workers installed reinforced chairs rated for human weight. The food synthesizers were being updated with human recipes. Even the air mixture in certain sections was being adjusted to Earth standards. Look at these readings, Duha called out to her, pointing at his screen. Their home planet has almost twice our gravity. How do they even move in that? Jin looked at the data. Earth seemed like a nightmare world to her. High gravity, extreme temperature changes, dangerous predators, and natural disasters. The fact that humans not only survived there but built a civilization was amazing. Maybe they won't be so bad, she said, trying to convince herself. The report says they're curious and like to learn, just like us. True, Duha replied, but it also says they can run for hours without stopping and heal from injuries that would kill us. They're built like living tanks. That evening, Jin received the profiles of the human delegation. With shaking hands, she opened the first file. Ambassador Lee and Dr. Park would be the main representatives. Their images showed creatures that looked almost like giants to her, tall, solidly built, with strange fur on their heads and faces. The station's warning system suddenly blared. Attention all personnel. Unknown object approaching at high speed. Jin rushed to the nearest window. In the purple sky of Iona Prime, she saw a streak of light. Using her tablet, she zoomed in on the object. It was a small human scout ship, arriving early to check the station's security. Even their small ships looked strong and powerful, with thick metal plating and robust engines, so different from the elegant, light vessels her people built. They're really coming, she whispered, watching the scout ship circle the station. Her antenna twitched with a mix of fear and curiosity. That night, Jin barely slept. She kept thinking about the humans who would soon walk these halls. Would they find her as strange as she found them? Would they be gentle despite their strength? Could her people learn to work with beings so different from themselves? In 3 days, she would have her answers. She just hoped she could keep her promise to Director Tadawan about not fainting. Jin stood with the welcome committee at the station's main docking port, trying to stop her antenna from twitching. The human ship had just locked onto their docking clamps, and the sound of metal touching metal echoed through the hall. Remember, Director Tadawan whispered to everyone, no sudden movements. Stay calm and professional. The airlock doors started to open with a soft hiss. Jin held her breath. Through the clear safety glass, she saw the first human emerge from their ship. Ambassador Lee was tall, so incredibly tall. Jin's head would barely reach the human's chest. The ambassador wore what seemed to be formal clothes, a dark blue suit that showed off powerful shoulders and strong arms. But what caught Jin's attention was how the human moved. Despite their size and strength, Ambassador Lee's steps were careful and measured, like a large creature trying not to scare smaller ones. The thought both comforted and frightened Jin. The second human followed, Dr. Park, the scientist Jin would work with. This human was shorter than the ambassador but still towered over the Nari. Dr. Park carried a heavy equipment case in one hand like it weighed nothing. Jin knew that case would need 2 of her people to lift it. "Welcome to Eonha Prime Research Station," Director Taiwan said, his voice only shaking a little. "We are honored to host you." Ambassador Li smiled, showing flat teeth, not sharp ones like Hejin had feared. "Thank you for having us. We look forward to learning from each other." The human's voice was deep but gentle. Hejin felt some of her fear fade, replaced by curiosity. These creatures were clearly powerful, but they seemed to be trying hard to appear friendly. "This is Hejin, our lead xenobiologist," Director Taiwan said, gesturing to her. "She will be working closely with Dr. Park." Hejin stepped forward on shaky legs. Dr. Park smiled and held out a hand, a human greeting gesture they had learned about. "It's wonderful to meet you," Dr. Park said softly, noticing Hejin's nervous antenna. "I've read your papers on local plant life. Amazing work." Hejin carefully touched the human's hand. It was warm, warmer than Nari body temperature, and she could feel the strength in even that gentle grip. But Dr. Park was clearly being careful not to squeeze too hard. A loud bang from the docking bay made everyone jump. One of the Nari workers had dropped a tool. Hejin watched in amazement as both humans turned toward the sound with incredible speed, their bodies tensing like springs ready to jump. Then, just as quickly, they relaxed and smiled again. But Hejin had seen it. The lightning-fast reflexes, the instant readiness for action. These beings could switch from gentle to alert in less than a heartbeat. "Perhaps we could see our quarters," Ambassador Li asked smoothly, pretending nothing had happened. The journey was long. As they walked through the station, Hejin noticed how the humans ducked under doorways designed for Nari height. Their feet made heavier sounds on the floor, and their movements had a strange grace, like powerful animals choosing to move slowly. "Your station is beautiful," Dr. Park said to Hejin as they walked. "The design is so organic and flowing." "Thank you," Hejin replied, surprised she could speak without her voice shaking. "We believe surroundings affect mood and thought." "A wise philosophy," the human said, carefully stepping around a delicate plant display. Hejin watched Dr. Park's careful movements and felt something shift in her mind. Yes, these humans were terrifying in their potential for action, but they also seemed to understand their own power and worked hard to make others comfortable. Maybe, she thought, that made them even more fascinating than frightening. A week had passed since the humans arrived, and Hejin found herself in the main laboratory with Dr. Park. She watched as the human lifted a heavy analysis machine with one hand to clean under it. "Please, let me call the maintenance robots," Hejin said, her antenna twitching with worry. Dr. Park smiled and set the machine down gently. "It's no trouble. On Earth, this would be considered a light piece of equipment." Hejin tried to hide her amazement. The machine weighed as much as 3 Nari adults, yet the human moved it like she might move a dinner plate. "Tell me about Earth plants," Hejin said, changing the subject. She felt safer talking about science. "Are they like ours?" "Very different," Dr. Park replied, pulling out a tablet. "Look at this earth tree we call an oak." The image showed a huge plant with a thick trunk and heavy branches. Hejin's eyes widened. "It doesn't look real. How does it support all that weight?" "Earth's gravity made our plants evolve to be strong," Dr. Park explained, "just like it made us strong." They spent the next hour comparing Earth and Eonha prime plants. Hejin found herself moving closer to the human, her scientific curiosity overtaking her fear. She even laughed when Dr. Park told jokes about Earth vegetables. Later that day, they visited the station's garden dome. Hejin watched in surprise as Dr. Park kneeled down to examine a delicate purple flower, those strong hands moving with incredible gentleness. "Beautiful," the human said softly. "The petals look like silk." "They're very fragile," Hejin explained. "Even our touch can damage them." Dr. Park nodded and withdrew without touching the flower. Sometimes strength means knowing when not to use it. Hejin felt her heart beat faster at those words. She was starting to see something she hadn't expected in these powerful beings, a deep respect for delicate things. During lunch, they sat in the station's dining hall. Hijin watched with fascination as Dr. Park ate Earth food from the synthesizer. The human needed much more food than a Nari, and different types too. "Would you like to try some?" Dr. Park offered, holding out something called a sandwich. Hijin's antenna perked up with interest. She took a tiny bite. The flavors were strong, like everything about humans, but not unpleasant. "We have a saying on Earth," Dr. Park said, watching her reaction. "Food brings people together." Their work that afternoon involved collecting samples from the forest near the station. Hijin saw another side of human capability when Dr. Park easily carried all their equipment, jumped over fallen trees, and moved through rough terrain without trouble. "How do you move so easily here?" Hijin asked. "Our gravity is so different from Earth's. Actually, it makes us feel light," Dr. Park explained. "Like we could jump twice as high. But we're careful not to. We don't want to damage anything." Hijin thought about this as they worked. Humans could do so much more than they showed. They chose to be gentle, to move slowly, to be careful. That choice made them even more impressive to her. At the end of the day, as they walked back to the station, Hijin realized something had changed. She no longer flinched when Dr. Park moved suddenly. She didn't worry about those strong hands handling delicate equipment. Instead, she found herself admiring how the humans balanced their strength with kindness. They were like their own ships, powerful on the outside, but capable of very gentle things. "Same time tomorrow?" Dr. Park asked as they reached the station. "Yes," Hijin replied, her antenna swaying happily. "I'd like that very much." The day started like any other on Yunha Prime Research Station. Hijin was working with Dr. Park in Research Pod 3, studying plant samples from the western forest. The pod was one of 6 bubble-shaped rooms that stuck out from the main station's sides. Then everything went wrong. The first warning was a strange creaking sound from above. Hijin's antenna shot straight up in alarm. They never heard creaking in the station's strong walls. Dr. Park looked up sharply. "That doesn't sound good." Before Hijin could reply, a crack appeared in the pod's ceiling. Her people's technology was excellent, but this pod was old, and the planet's acid rain had slowly weakened the outer shell. "Warning, Pod 3 structural failure detected," the station's computer announced. "Emergency evacuation required." Hijin turned to run, but another crack appeared, and suddenly the air began to rush out of the pod. Papers flew everywhere. Equipment crashed against walls. The emergency doors started to close, too slowly. She felt herself being pulled toward the growing crack. Her light Nari body couldn't fight against the escaping air. Terror froze her mind as she started to lift off the floor. Then she felt something solid grab her waist. Dr. Park had wrapped one arm around her while holding onto a bolted-down table with the other hand. "Hold on," the human shouted over the roar of escaping air. Hijin watched in amazement as Dr. Park's muscles tensed. The human began moving toward the emergency door, fighting against the pull of the vacuum. Each step was careful but strong, like walking against a powerful wind. The crack grew bigger. More air rushed out, but Dr. Park didn't let go or get pulled back. Instead, the human's face showed complete focus, each movement planned and powerful. They were almost at the door when a large piece of equipment broke free from the wall and flew toward them. Without letting go of Hijin, Dr. Park caught the heavy metal box with one hand before it could hit them. The human's strength was terrifying and wonderful at the same time. "Almost there," Dr. Park said through gritted teeth. 3 more steps. 2. 1. They passed through the emergency doors just as they slammed shut. The pod sealed off, saving the station's air, but losing everything inside. Hijin collapsed on the floor, shaking. Dr. Park knelt beside her, checking for injuries. Those same hands that had just shown impossible strength now moved with gentle care. "Are you hurt?" the human asked softly. No, He-Jin whispered. You saved my life. By now, other station staff had arrived. Director Ta-1 ran up, his antenna practically tied in knots with worry. What happened? Is everyone okay? He asked. We're fine, Dr. Park said, still watching He-Jin with concern. But we'll need a new research pod. He-Jin couldn't stop staring at the human. She had just seen Dr. Park lift a table-sized piece of equipment one-handed while fighting against vacuum pressure. It was the kind of strength that should have terrified her. But she wasn't terrified. Because along with that strength, she had seen perfect control. The human had protected her without causing a single bruise on her delicate Nari skin. Thank you, she said again, her voice stronger now. Dr. Park smiled. That's what friends are for. Friends. Yes, He-Jin realized that's what they had become. And it had taken nearly dying to understand that the same things that made humans scary, their strength, their quick reactions, their powerful bodies, also made them amazing allies and protectors. As the station's medical team checked her over, He-Jin watched Dr. Park help organize the cleanup crew. The human was back to moving carefully, being gentle. But now, He-Jin knew what lay beneath that gentleness, and somehow that made her feel safer than she'd ever felt before. 3 days after the pod incident, He-Jin sat in the station's garden dome with Dr. Park. The human had suggested they work here while Pod 3 was being repaired. Beautiful purple flowers surrounded them, their sweet smell filling the air. I have a question, He-Jin said, her antenna moving with curiosity. Why are humans so strong, but so gentle too? Dr. Park put down a tablet and thought for a moment. It's because of Earth. Our world taught us both things. Tell me about Earth, He-Jin asked. She moved closer, no longer afraid of being near the human. Earth is beautiful, but dangerous, Dr. Park began. We have oceans that can swallow cities, mountains that touch the clouds, storms that can throw cars into the air. He-Jin's eyes went wide. How did you survive? We adapted, got stronger, learned to build better tools. Dr. Park picked up one of the delicate purple flowers, holding it so carefully it didn't even bend. But we also learned that strength isn't just about power. It's about control. Like how you saved me, He-Jin said softly. Yes, on Earth, we often had to protect smaller creatures, care for young animals, fix tiny machines. We learned to be gentle because we had to be. He-Jin watched as Dr. Park set the flower back down, perfect and undamaged. She thought about how the human had carried her through the vacuum without leaving a single bruise. Your people think we're scary, Dr. Park said. We know that. It's why we try so hard to move slowly, speak softly, be careful. I was scared at first, He-Jin admitted, but not anymore. Now I think humans are amazing. Dr. Park smiled. And we think the Nari are amazing too. Your technology, your peaceful ways, how you study life instead of conquering it. We have much to learn from you. They spent the next hour sharing stories. He-Jin learned about Earth's animals, huge creatures called elephants that were gentle giants, tiny hummingbirds that were fierce fighters. Dr. Park told her about human children who had to be taught to control their strength, just like He-Jin was taught to control her fear. Would you like to see something? Dr. Park asked suddenly. A human greeting for close friends. He-Jin nodded, her antenna perking up with interest. It's called a high five, Dr. Park explained, holding up one hand. You touch your palm to mine. But don't worry, I'll be very gentle. Slowly, He-Jin raised her 4-fingered hand. She pressed it against Dr. Park's larger 5-fingered one. The human skin was warm, the touch careful but firm. Now we're officially friends, Dr. Park said with a smile. He-Jin felt her heart beat faster, but not from fear this time. She realized that somewhere between her terror at first meeting humans and now something had changed. She had learned to see past their scary strength to the kindness beneath. Director Taiwan wants to make human Nari research teams permanent. He Jin said, "Would you like to stay and work with me?" "I'd love to," Dr. Park replied. "We make a good team. Your knowledge and my muscle." They both laughed, and He Jin marveled at how natural it felt now. Sitting here with a being who could probably break the station's walls, yet chose to handle flowers with perfect care. "Humans are full of surprises," He Jin said. "So are the Nari," Dr. Park answered. "You're braver than you think." Looking at their hands, her small blue one next to the human's larger pink one, He Jin thought about how fear could turn into friendship, and how strength could mean so many different things. 6 months had passed since the humans first arrived at Eunha Prime Research Station. He Jin stood in front of Director Taiwan's desk, her antenna swaying with excitement as she handed in her final report. "Interesting conclusions," the director said, reading through her work. "You've changed your mind about humans quite a bit." "Yes," He Jin replied. "I used to think their strength made them scary. Now I know it makes them special." The report showed all she had learned: how humans used their power to help, not hurt; how they could lift heavy equipment but also handle the most delicate plants; how they moved fast when needed but chose to move slowly to make others comfortable. "And now you want to go to Earth?" Director Taiwan asked, his antenna twitching with surprise. "Yes," He Jin said firmly. "I've been accepted into their exchange program. Dr. Park will be my guide." The director looked worried. "Earth is a death world, He Jin. The gravity alone could hurt you. They've made special suits for Nari visitors," she explained, "and safe buildings with our gravity. The humans thought of everything to protect us." Just then, Dr. Park appeared at the office door. "Ready for your Earth preparation class?" He Jin nodded happily. These classes taught Nari visitors how to survive on Earth. She followed Dr. Park to the training room, where a gravity simulator waited. "Remember," Dr. Park said, helping He Jin put on her protective suit, "start slow. Earth's gravity will make you feel heavy." He Jin stepped into the simulator. Even with the suit helping her, Earth's gravity felt like it was pushing her down. But she didn't give up. She had learned something important from the humans. Being strong wasn't just about muscles. "Very good," Dr. Park encouraged as He Jin took careful steps. "You're doing better than I did my first time in low gravity." Later that day, He Jin sat in the garden dome, writing in her personal log. "When I first met humans, I was terrified. Their strength seemed dangerous. Their quick movements made me nervous. Everything about them spelled danger to my Nari instincts. But now I understand. Humans aren't scary because they're strong. They're amazing because they choose how to use that strength. They can break down walls but instead use their power to build things. They can move fast enough to catch falling objects, but choose to move slowly to make others comfortable. I've learned that being strong isn't just about lifting heavy things. It's about being gentle when needed. It's about using your power to help others. Humans taught me that. Tomorrow, I leave for Earth. Some of my friends think I'm crazy to go to a death world. But I'm not afraid anymore. Because now I know that where there are humans, there is protection. Where there is human strength, there is also human kindness. Dr. Park says Earth has something called rain, water that falls from the sky. The same water can destroy mountains or help flowers grow. I think humans are like their planet's rain. They can be powerful or gentle. And somehow, they've learned to be both at once. I'm not the same person I was 6 months ago. Meeting humans changed me. Their strength still amazes me, but now it makes me feel safe instead of scared. I can't wait to see their world, to learn more about these wonderful beings who can be both terrifying and gentle at the same time. Most of all, I've learned that sometimes the things that scare us most can become the things we admire most. You just have to look past your fear to see the truth." He Jin finished writing and looked out at the purple forest of Eunha Prime. Tomorrow she would leave this peaceful world for Earth, a planet that had created beings of incredible strength and surprising gentleness. She wasn't terrified anymore. She was excited.